A comic book publisher that put out some of the most disturbing and collectible pre-code horror books also published some of the books that became the biggest sellers during the Silver Age, but are largely ignored by collectors today. On this video, we're going to take a look at key comics from the Harvey Comics line. Up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. And before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe, and follow us on other social medias, on Instagram and whatnot. All the descriptions, all the links are in the description of this video down below. And we're just going to get started. We're going to go talk about Harvey Comics, a publisher with a long history that no longer exists today, but some of the comics are very well remembered, and some of the characters are beloved by some Americans, but not necessarily hunted for by comic collectors. They put out a large number of comics in the Silver and Bronze Age, and these characters still have resonance today. But let's take a look. It's a long, unusual history. They went from pre-code horror, and they were able to pivot after the Comics Code and still publish some stories with ghosts and witches. Let's take a look at Harvey Comics. So I think there were four brothers who were the founders of Harvey Comics. And they started their Speed Comics from 1939, which is actually published by Brookwood, was a line that Harvey took over. They bought out Brookwood. This is a book from the Carson City pedigree, a 9.0, starring Shock Gibson, the human dynamo. Again, this is 1939, and this is one of those, following in the steps of Superman. Superman lifts a car, Shock's lifting a tank. Who did the cover? Bob Powell, George Tuska art. It doesn't say who did but this is a pretty cool cover for 1939. And I'm looking on Heritage because I just want to see 2017, a 9.0 sold for $7,700. And there are collectors of some of these earlier. This is a Carson City pedigree. These earlier superhero comics. But Harvey then essentially took over Speed, and there was an issue of Speed Comics that came out the first month as Pocket Comics #1. Which is a digest size, pocket sized. And it's the first Harvey comic published in 1941. Joe Simon did the cover. And it is a little bit ghoulish with Satan holding the Statue of Liberty. And here comes the Spirit of 76, a patriotic hero, which predates Captain America by just a couple of months. Right? Captain America was late 1941, if I remember off the top of my head. And this is a 6.5 that sold for $6,000, which it's a 100-page pocketbook in 2023. So that's a fairly current price. Let's take a look at the back cover. So they were also publishing other books, and some of their superhero related stories, like this Champion Comics was another run that they had. This is a bondage cover by Kirby and Simon in 1940 that predates, and you can see that that's a Simon Kirby face, and one of these superheroes back in the day that decided to wear a cape but no shirt and short pants. I mean, I guess maybe there was some invulnerability. I'm not exactly sure who the hero is. The Champ, maybe. Seems like a pretty standard superhero name. And then Speed Comics also, they got Alex Schomburg did this cover to issue a number 28 in 1943. This is a 2.0 Nazi monster cover. And I think this is a Schomburg cover, if I remember correctly. $6,300 for a 2.0. But Harvey was also publishing a lot of licensed properties. Like they picked up the Green Hornet starting with issue number 7. That also included, like, Spirit of 76 jumped into that book too. Robin Hood, who was in public domain. Joe Palooka, who had been a newspaper strip character. Written and drawn by Ham Fisher. That may well be, let's look up Joe Palooka for a second. That may well be the creator of Joe Palooka. And I believe, he was a comic strip character as far back as 1930. Ham Fisher did it through 1956. And is that comic books radio series? Film debut in 1934 with Stuart Irwin in the title role. Jimmy Durante as Nobby. Lupe Velez, I believe, starred in the Spanish language version of Dracula in 1931. Or maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. I thought she was, she was married to Johnny Weissmuller. Anyway, I digress. Let me just say, maybe I'm thinking of someone else. No, there's no Dracula. It wasn't Lupe Velez. Anyway, I've seen her in other stuff. That's a movie I should watch. Wow. Film can be seen online. And there's shorts, return to feature-length films. So Joe Palooka ran a lot. And I'm wondering if he was named after the word Palooka, or the word Palooka is a derivation of him. Palooka definition. Yeah, big Palooka. Oh, it's informal, dated, an inferior average prize fighter of unknown origin, popularized by the comic strip character, but it seems to predate him. Anyway, that might have been where I guess that's where he got the name. That's not where the word came from. Anyway, Joe Palooka was another licensed property. I think he ran for over 100 issues. Dick Tracy, also, who was a comic strip character. And these are all very popular comic strip characters. So Harvey did very well with them. In 1946, they had Simon and Kirby back doing Boy Explorers. Another one of these, like Boy's Ranch and Boy Commandos. They just jumped from publisher to publisher back in the day. This is a file copy in a 9.4. Boy's Ranch was a little bit later, $5,200. But then really where collectors are interested in Harvey Comics now. And it's kind of weird because when I hear Harvey Comics, I don't think of horror right away because I grew up with Harvey Comics, and we'll talk about in several minutes what they became most well known for, especially like for my generation. Black Cat Comics #1. So she was more of we had some good girl art, more in the superhero style. Black Cat, right? She was in Hollywood, and this #1, a 9.6, selling for $14,000. But what happened is Black Cat no longer headlined her own comic book in the early 1950s during pre-code horror. It became Black Cat Mystery, and this is one of the most sought after covers of pre-code horror. Black Cat Mystery Comics #50, which only has her name, with a guy, the radium melting his skin off his face and hands. That is a Lee Elias cover. And I picked out this 9.6, sold in 2021 for $72,000. Also, Chamber Chills 19. This was another Harvey title, and we have this wine glass with the woman's skeleton. This has been much referenced. Another Lee Elias cover, a 9.6, selling for $102,000 back in 2021. Another one of the, then there's Tomb of Terror, where this guy's face is exploding. Is this Lee Elias too? Yes, it is. Tomb of Terror #15 from 1954. So we're approaching the end of pre-code horror as the comic code. This is another 1954 book. Witch's Tales was another title. So Harvey was well into the pre-code horror genre. genre. Howard Nostrand did the cover here, this decapitated head in the bell. So that is pretty gruesome. And then there also is this. This is an interesting one. This is from 1952, Harvey Comics Library #1, which isn't really the title you see in the trade dress. It's Teenage Dope Slaves. And this is one I just kind of found, as exposed by Rex Morgan, MD. Rex Morgan, MD definitely sounds like a comic book doctor. Like if you were like looking for doctors to go to and the doctor's name was Rex Morgan, I don't know if I'd be taking, I'd look elsewhere. Bruce, you've got to stop now before it's too late. Please, I'll get the money somehow. Somehow don't count. Cash on the line, sucker, or no shot. So he's going to give him like heroin or something, opium. I don't know what he's giving him. And he's teenage. He's a teenage dope slave. Look, he has a banner. He wants to go to State University, but he really, really wants the dope. And so this, I think this was mentioned in Sodi. So what's on the back cover here? Oh, wait. Meet the creators of Rex Morgan. Okay, Rex Morgan wasn't a real doctor. As exposed by Rex Morgan. I guess Rex Morgan in the story exposes the teenage dope slaves. Shocking dope expose. I kind of want this comic now. Like Harvey Comics Library #1. Let's see. This is funny. I do these videos about like, you know, first appearances and lists, and all of a sudden I want the comics. Try to be careful with your Teenage Dope Slaves, $3,000. That's probably a little overpriced, but yeah, pretty rare. I don't know how many there are on the census. There are 77 universal copies on the census and 5 restored. Looks like you're gonna have to pay upwards of $1,000 unless you want something really low grade. You're definitely gonna have to pay in the hundreds. I'm not sure. Yeah, 2024, 5.5 for 5,000, 5.0 for, so about $1,000 a grade point. Well, actually, yeah, I guess. Approximately $1,000 a grade point. And I am, since I'm such an influencer, I'm going to increase the desire for this book. But then, 1954, we're publishing this Witch's Tales, and then we get the Comics Code Authority, and all of these titles have to be canceled. But unlike EC, Harvey had a fallback. They had a number of properties that they were publishing. And one of them, like, they started with these kids books, right? These humor books. And here's Little Max, #1. This is from 1948 with Joe Palooka on the cover. Pretty sure that's Joe. And this has a little dot 2-page story and text story. So yeah, this is Little Max right there. But Little Dot became a much more popular character. And actually, in Sad Sack #1, Sad Sack was, I believe, a licensed property. This is the first true appearance of Little Dot. Sad Sack, was it Sad Sack? No. Wasn't Sad Sack in the Army? Now I'm confused. Right? Sad Sack was in the Army. Because his first appearance was in True Comics 55, I believe. True Comics #55. I may be wrong, but I don't think so. Yep, that believes. Yep, 1946. True Comics #55. And I believe, I think this is the first appearance of Sad Sack. I thought he was mostly in the Army. I don't know. Sad Sack Comics. I mean, that guy just looks like a sad sack. Maybe he got drafted later on. No, he's just a sad sack. I thought, no, there he is. He's like, here's in the Army in 1949. Back in the Army again. Maybe he got out of the Army after World War II, but then he had to re-up because it doesn't look like he had a whole lot of other skills. Anyway, so Sad Sack Comics #1 has the first appearance of Little Dot. This is a 9.2 that sold for $4,000, or asking price of $4,000. I'm not going to buy that. But so they were able to pivot, and then Little Dot got her own book in 1953. And this is a big key. This is a very big key, because it is the first appearance of Little Lotta and Richie Rich. So Richie Rich was and Little Dot, like, she just likes dots. Like, she has paint with dots somehow. And you can see in January of last year, a 9.6 sold for $78,000. And I think the first appearance of Richie Rich really drives that. Now, they also, no, I'm going to move this here. I don't want to do that yet. Resume. Now, Richie Rich didn't get his own title until 1960, but look at this. A 9.6 sold last year for $108,000 for Richie Rich #1. And this is what I was talking about. Harvey went from that pre-code horror to Richie Rich. Now, in the 60s, and really even into the 70s, Richie Rich was one of the best-selling titles in all of comics. Cartoons about Richie Rich. He had so many different titles. If we just look here on cover price, let's just take a quick look at Richie Rich titles and how many issues they ran for. Richie Rich ran for 254 issues through 1991. Then there was another 28 issue run by Harvey. Marvel had it for, 1 issue. And then Richie Rich Riches, 59 issues. Richie Rich Millions from 61 to 82, 113 issues. Fortunes from 71 to 82, 63 issues. Diamonds, 72 to 82, 59 issues. Jackpots, 72 to 82, 58 issues. Richie Rich and Casper, 45 issues. Profits, 7 issues. Gems in the 70s, 43 issues. So it was really in the early to mid 70s that he started getting tons and tons of other titles. So like often you'll find Richie Rich Dollars and Cents from 63 to 92, 109 issues. Success Stories from 64 to 82, 105 issues. I think there were more Richie Rich books than Superman books. There was ton of Richie Rich all over the place. So he became an incredibly popular character. Now, like here is his first cover appearance, which is a little more affordable. It's in Little Dot #6. And it also has Little Lotta in it, who I believe that's her first cover appearance. And her comic thing is that she's just morbidly obese and likes to eat a lot. Now, another Hot Stuff was another Harvey property. Hot Stuff, The Little Devil, #1 from 1957. You can see in 2015, a $7,000 book. And again, there were animated series in the 60s, a little less in the 70s, although Richie Rich kind of did limp in. But Harvey also acquired characters. And I didn't realize that these weren't related. But Casper the Friendly Ghost, his first comic was in 1949 by St. John Publications. Looks a little bit different than the Casper we would see later on. An 8.5, what was that? Sold for $7,000 back in 2008. So yeah, Casper, a big property. So St. John's published 6 issues, and then with issue #7, Harvey took over in 1952. And Casper, as well as, and then we can see this is the first appearance of somebody. Wendy the Witch. Right? And that's what I said. They gave a pre-code R, but they were publishing Ghosts and Witches. The first appearance of Wendy is a little less expensive, but still a book that has value, which is Casper #20. They also acquired Little Audrey, who had a very long history in comic strips. And actually, Casper had animated shorts that predated his comic book appearances. So, but eventually, Harvey took over those properties. And they that was the bulk of their publishing through the 60s and into the 70s and into the 80s. And it was in the 1990s, 1994, we got a Richie Rich live action film. This was a very, very popular thing to do at the time, to take these cartoon and TV show properties and reboot them as feature-length films. We had Little Rascals and the Flintstones, the Beverly Hillbillies. Some of the movies were decent. There was a Dennis the Menace movie, which actually wasn't bad because it co-starred Walter Matthau. I don't believe I've seen this. And then the following year, Casper got his own full-length film with Christina Ricci in it. A lot of special effects, but I think it was kind of gruesome to like in live action, tell the story of a dead child. That's kind of why it didn't work for me. 90s kids may feel a little bit differently because they grew up on it, but Casper, the movie, was kind of creepy to me. And I remember there was a Simpsons joke where they said that Casper was the spirit of Richie Rich, who had killed himself because he realized that all his money wasn't bringing him happiness, that his life was empty. So these properties, you know, Richie Rich and Casper, there are enough like 90s kids that saw these movies. And, you know, if they become golden age comic book aficionados, and not for nothing, but these are kind of fun books to find. There aren't many of them out there. They weren't collected even in the 70s and 80s. You know, nobody was looking. There weren't as many collectors looking for the old issues of that as superhero or pre-code horror, or even war or romance or westerns, or probably even Archies. Now, Harvey did have a little bit of a last gasp in the 80s and 90s where they adapted things like Back to the Future, Beetlejuice, Monster in My Pocket was a toy line. Supposedly there's a live action something coming out of this, and that did make a hot list like last year. Saved by the Bell, with this photo cover of all of your favorite Saved by the Bell actors. And that was kind of the last gasp of Harvey Comics. They stopped publishing comics in the 90s. I think they were finally went out of business in 2002, I believe it was. Most of the properties like Casper and Richie Rich were bought by DreamWorks. So now I believe it's NBC Comcast that owns the rights to those characters. But we haven't seen a lot of that in recent years. So yeah, Harvey Comics, they, you know, very quickly, and I guess for their sake, it was very successful. They were able to pivot from this to this with very little problem and still stayed in business, where EC, which was pretty much totally in the horror genre, managed to, you know, hold on with Mad Magazine, but for the next couple of decades, they weren't as successful. And I am always astounded by the sheer number of Richie Rich comics. So let me know what you think. Do you have any of these? Are you interested in the pre-code horror? Or are you more interested in like those golden age first appearances of well-known characters in the popular culture? I always like to look at comics occasionally, sometimes through the lens of not necessarily comic book collectors, but folks that, you know, are more involved in popular culture and are fans of something specific. I did a Gold Key video, which has been very popular. People still watch that to this day. And I also like to take a look at the history of some of the publishers you're not familiar with. Harvey started much like any other publisher in the golden age with, you know, your standard fare of superheroes and patriotic heroes. And then they transitioned to pre-code horror, but also had the funny, you know, not the funny animals so much, but as, you know, the funny books for kids, for young kids. And that kept them in business for decades. So, I mean, let me know in the comments below what you think of Harvey Comics. And if you are a collector of any of those, do you try to, is there anybody out there who's like trying to complete a run of Richie Rich's Billions? I don't know. I come across the Richie Rich comics all the time, and I'm not always sure what to do with them. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. You can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.